Here begins lesson 6.4, part B. Now how do we complete the square if we have a lead coefficient that is not a 1? Now if you notice, we have a 3 here. And we cannot use the method of completing the square unless our lead coefficient is 1. So our first step for this one is to divide everything by 3. And in doing so, we will get x squared minus 2/3 x minus 1/3 equals 0. Now, at this point, we can complete the square. And we're going to use the same process as we used before. We're going to add a number that will give us a perfect square. I'm going to move the negative 1/3 to the other side by adding it. And since I'm writing it, I know that whatever number I come up with when I complete the square must be added to both sides. So I'm going to set that up right now. Now, 2/3 is our x coefficient. It's actually negative 2/3, but it doesn't matter if you bring the negative with it or not. The reason being, when I square it, it'll turn positive automatically. So I'm just going to look at it as a positive 2/3. Now instead of saying 2/3 divided by a half, 2/3 divided by 2, I'm going to multiply by a half. It means the same thing. Dividing by a number is the same as multiplying by its reciprocal, because it's a little bit easier to calculate fractions when they're written that way. And then we square it. 2 times 2, 3 times 2 gives us 2/6 squared. I highly recommend you simplify. Easier numbers to work with. And we get 1/9. Now this is factorable. If we complete the square properly, then the next step should be somewhat simple. X minus minus, because it's a minus plus. Now if you remember, the terms that go here and here, when you multiply them, you'll get 1/9. Or if you add them together, you get 2/3. That's what we did when we completed the square. We divided by 2 and squared. So the number inside the parentheses will always be half of this. So in this case then, that would give us half of 2/3 is 1/3. On the right side, we do have to add the fractions by having a common denominator. That would give us 3/9 plus 1/9, which gives us 4/9. Again, the benefit of completing the square is that we can go to this step easily, and we can square root. That will give us x minus 1/3 equals a plus minus root of 4/9. Root of 4 is 2, root of 9 is 3. Add 1/3 and x equals my apologies for our school bell. I'm doing this during my prep. So we have 1/3 plus 2/3 and 1/3 minus 2/3. And that will give us 3/3 or 1 and negative 1/3 for the other. So even if you have a fraction, you can still divide by 2 and square, and you still have a somewhat manageable problem or exercise. Now what does it look like to have complex solutions? Well, let's do the same thing we've been doing before. We're going to subtract the 3, and we'll get x squared plus 2x plus a number we'll come up with. And to maintain balance, about the same amount on the other side. X coefficient is 2, so we divide by 2 and we square it, and that is 1. Now I'm going to jump a step here. On the right side we have -2, and I know that if I completed it properly, I'll have the same thing in parentheses. So instead of writing it out by factoring, I'm going to go right to this step. First term will be x, plus plus, so I will have a plus inside the parentheses. And factors of 1 that add to 2, 1. One less step to do. Also, you know, it is worth mentioning that again, this term is half of the x coefficient. So it was 2, now it's 1. So if x plus 1 equals a plus minus root -2. Now we have a negative in the root. A negative in the root means that there's an imaginary part here. So I'm going to take that negative out and put I in front of it. This is a complex solution. We have an imaginary part to it. We have a radical, so we can't simplify any further. So this is as far as we could go in this question. And that is the end of Part B, Lesson 6.4.